All right, thank you, thank you. All right, so with that, let's get into the interview with the gentleman of the hour. Paul, Jerry, thank you guys for being here. So before we jump into East Blocks, why don't you guys just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and the company you guys work for?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Coonrod. So glad that we're hosting this event, and thanks for everybody showing up here. So a little bit about myself. Born and raised in one of the greatest cities in the United States, which is Galveston, and grew up there. I went to UT Austin, and right after UT Austin, actually I moved to Manhattan. So I lived in Lower East Side for 2 years, and then actually I was working at a software company that actually relocated me to Hong Kong. So then from there, I moved to Hong Kong, and I was there for 3 years. So I spent a good 5 years outside of Texas without a car. And so for those that have done that or have not done that, you kind of understand how important that is to you in a good and bad way. And I think that was one of the influences for kind of our initial approach for East Blocks, was the fact is that there's a lot of great opportunities in cities outside of Houston that are walkable, that are fun, that people want to walk in. And the most critical piece that I think I kind of surmised from that experience was that you got to be in a place that people want to walk. And so I think that's kind of a little bit of what we have here.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Jerry Alexander with Gensler, and my background, I started in Dallas, and I've moved in a bunch of different places. Went to school in Austin as well. But some of the biggest influence over my career is I had a brand agency here in Houston for over a decade, and that shaped a lot of how I look at architecture and design. And I can tell you, working with these guys has been fantastic, because they came at this in a very different way, which really matched up with the way I love to look at things. And it's a lot about people. It's a lot about experiences. And the buildings, as an architect, the building is important, but it's not the only thing. So that's a little bit about what we do. And at Gensler, we do a lot of different things. So
Done a few projects at Gensler?
we've done a couple of projects here and there.
Pretty big company. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. No, it sounds like you guys are a great match for this project that I really believe, kind of to your point, Paul, the location of it, that's why this can work. That's why this can really be one of the true walkable districts in Houston, because it is in the heart of an area that everyone already wants to walk. So now we got to get the retail, the interesting streetscapes, the landscape architecture going, and I think it's going to be a great success. So obviously development is about going vertical, or in this case, adaptive reuse project and all of the rest. However, before that gets started, we have to get the land, the building, all of that has to be acquired. And there's a lot of buildings here, right in the heart of, next to downtown Houston. And I'm sure a lot of people have been going for these buildings. And so tell us a little bit about how all this came together. I know it's probably a long story, but how did y'all get these 10 buildings that are so close to each other that can really create a walkable district?
Sure. So it was a labor of love, that's for sure. It took many years, in a sense of just initial contact with the seller and actually purchasing the properties. But so specifically, this opportunity came to light when I was, before starting Pagewood, when I was at Stream. And I was at Stream for 14 years before Pagewood, and I was actually talking with the head of our Atlanta office, or Stream's Atlanta office at the time, who was probably a decade in front of Houston as far as adaptive reuse is concerned. The office market is around the similar size, but they have actually about 10 times the amount of adaptive reuse space than Houston has. And so fortunately, the head of the office came in town and I said, hey, look, let's go spend a day or two driving around Houston. I want your thoughts and feedback on what buildings might make the most sense from an adaptive reuse acquisition standpoint. And it was just kind of on a whim. It was one of those things that like, okay, let's do that. And so then we literally came in town, spent 2 days. He had a big stack of properties from CoStar that he printed off. We drove around, and most of them we just put an X through and like kind of put in the back seat as we're driving around. And then the stack of like, say, 30 properties or so that were the most interesting to us, half of them had the same ownership. And so we were like, okay, well, that seems interesting, of course, but I think that also, too, we're not the first group that had this idea or concept. And so We reached out to, at the time, the leasing person, said, is there any chance we could buy these properties? And of course they said, no way, absolutely not. And so then we emailed, called, kind of what you would do as far as a normal kind of looking to purchase a property standpoint.
Yeah, that's not necessarily readily for sale, like the extra
That's
things
right.
you gotta do to get it going.
That's right. He's trying to pluck these off market where you want the seller to think, at least you're buying them above market. And that's usually how they'll sell it off market. And we couldn't even get a response from the seller. And so around the same time, I actually had a trip planned to Manhattan, just totally random. But there was an entity, as we were kind of doing our research, that was loosely affiliated with the ownership group that had an address, which I thought at the time was their office space in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It was like 86th and 2nd Avenue. And so I had, a couple hours on a Tuesday afternoon that we didn't have any meetings. And so I said, okay, well, I'll just, you know what? I haven't heard back from these guys. I'm just going to go visit them in person and just, what do I have to lose kind of thing. And so I walk up and I remember it was a day where I was actually wearing kind of like a light gray suit. So if it was raining, it looked like you're really wet, and it was raining. Yeah. And so I walk up, or I'm getting close to walking up, and I see that this is actually not any sort of office building. It's a high-rise condo, and this is the guy's house versus his actual office space that I walk in and try to figure out how we could do this. And so I walk up, and I see the doorman, and it just pulled the whole, hey, I'm Paul from Houston kind of thing, and I'm here to meet the current owner of the properties, and any chance you could give him a call and tell him I'm down here to see him. And he's like, go to hell, buddy. No chance in hell kind of thing. Fair enough. Okay, well, it was raining. So again, going back to kind of like, I looked like I was kind of in despair with just hair sopping wet. Didn't look, kind of beat down at that point. And I said, tell you what, can I just go sit down? I just need to write a note. I'm going to give you a note for this gentleman. He said, yeah, sure, of course. So I literally wrote out a handwritten note, just said, hey, I'm here. I want to talk to you about the plan that I sent you in an email. Give me a call when you can. Here's my business card. It total just Hail Mary at that point. It folded it up. And at this point, I was kind of talking to the doorman enough. I said, hey, look, is there any way you can give this to this gentleman? And he said, I will give it to him. That's all I can represent. Fair enough. And literally 2 weeks later, he calls me out of the blue. And that's kind of when everything started. And so essentially what happened was we had to buy the whole portfolio and convince him that we were the group that actually had plans in place to purchase it. At the time, it was 22 properties. We're left with 10 now. But we had to have a plan in place to convince him that we could actually close on 22 properties, and we had a plan in place to make money on them, essentially. And so what we did was we decided to group these buildings into two groups. The no-brainer group, which is all this stuff, total no-brainer. Everybody knows what to do with these, right? Yeah. And then essentially the disposition group, which is everything else. And so we focused on the no-brainer group as far as the redevelopment is concerned, and then the disposition group, which is actually our understanding of what we thought we would be able to sell all the other properties for. And that's exactly what we did. And so on the heels of all that, we essentially closed it about 4 years later, and then here we are. And so that was literally in about 2.5 years ago from when we closed all the properties, and here we are. So it's been a fun ride.
Fantastic. That's not easy. And that's usually how these great deals come together. There's nothing easy about it, right? It's not on the market. You've got to figure out how to get to it. You got to have a vision for it. So that's an incredible story. I love it.
Well, thank you. Never hurts with a little in-person cold call every once in a while, because we also learned too, it's like there's a lot of other people that called this gentleman. And so, just being there, right place, right time also didn't hurt at all either. Yeah.
No, I love it. Great story. Well, I think that's really impressive, and it's kind of, we were talking about on the walk, we talked about it again, the location right next to downtown is why this can work for walkability. And the amount of continuity you have among the buildings is why this can work. But we've seen a lot of people talk about walkability in Houston, and I think it's still a novelty for many reasons, and they try it and then they leave and it doesn't stick. So what do you and Jerry and SWA as well have planned to kind of really make this stick and make this a part of the urban fabric that is not just something we try out for a little bit and then move on, but something that's a part of your walkable neighborhood?
Yeah, so for us, when we were looking to capitalize this deal, meaning go out and just raise money to to close on it, we ended up closing it from a private fundraise. So a group of mostly high net worth individuals where we would have the flexibility to kind of make decisions on what we wanted to do with each property and when, versus where we also had opportunities to go with like a private equity fund, for example, where it could have been kind of a one and done deal where they'd come in and they would kind of call the shots more so of, hey, how fast can we actually buy this, lease it up and sell it and make a quick buck? Right. And at the time we had offers to do that and we could have made a quick buck, and we decided to say, no, let's pump the brakes. Let's do something that is right for this project, acknowledging kind of what we thought we had in our hand, and it really take our time to think through the actual plan. And what that means is for us was starting from the outside of the buildings and to not even really focus on what the exterior of the buildings would look like, because if we couldn't get everybody across each of these blocks easily where they felt safe at any time of day, and also a place where they knew where to park, knew where to go, then it's all for naught.
I think that's absolutely the key. You gotta have the streetscape, the sidewalks, the landscape architecture's got to all come together.
That's right. It's just acknowledging the stuff that's forefront to most folks that would be looking to lease here is security, right? So what do you do? So of course there's a whole bunch of new lights. It's a whole bunch of things where we're actually adding a walking path all around this whole area where it'll be well lit with picnic benches and landscaping where it's more clear, where things starting now feel a little bit like should it be going over here or over there, things will be more direct, more secure, and just much more comfortable and much more approachable.
Yeah, and we were, well, I don't know, Jerry, if you have any comments you want to add to that.
Well, I'll just add on to that. I mean, the thing that we look at is obviously the public realm and what kind of difference we can make there, but also from an architectural standpoint, what's great is we get all this character, all this context, a lot of challenges. The buildings are on the property lines or over them. You know, the floor heights are elevated above sidewalks. Those are the challenges that will create magic. So I got to tell you, this kind of project, restoration, bringing things back, that's where you get things that you can't get otherwise. We wouldn't do this if we had a new build and we were starting from scratch. We wouldn't create these obstacles that really become magical.
Become opportunities if you do it right, absolutely. And we were talking about how in New York and other places you walk 2 or 3 blocks and it's not an issue. And here it's an issue for a lot of people, but it's because, you know, it's not an interesting walk. So if you can make the walk interesting, you know, you can walk 3, 4, 5 blocks and not feel it. So that's, you know, the key, as you guys know, and that's awesome. So I'm excited to see what you guys do here. So with that being said, let's shift our discussion to the actual buildings. We just got to see Live Oak, beautiful building. And that building, we were at the rooftop, but you guys said you were going to build additional structure on top of it. So tell me a little bit about those challenges and how are you going to retain the character and history as you upgrade these buildings to meet modern retail and office needs?
Ooh, good question. So I think that for us, across all these 10 buildings, the average age is 1945. And that's awesome. You know, to have a structure like these where there's a, you know, it's either 908 where it's a roof or like 1107 where there's a roof like this, you know, essentially the red brick on the outside on some of these buildings. It's almost ideal. The same as with 908, Falstaff Brewery. There's a history there. There's a company that did well that you want to preserve. You just don't want to remove all that. And so for us, it's keeping as much as we can. The challenge is what can you do that makes sense economically, that's also within code. And that's another strong challenge for the Gensler guys. So for that, I will turn it over to Jerry.
Well, again, I'll say what I said earlier. Those are the challenges that really create magic. And I think, you know, when you talk about people and their experience with buildings and walkable spaces and stuff, we know we've done many projects. That's just what they're drawn to. Things with character, things with a legacy, things that they can talk about. They want memorable moments that have been here, that have a story. And a lot of times I think what you'll find is over this collection of buildings, this is the catalyst for the district, right? And it's going to bring more people and they're going to find more memories and there's going to be a lot more stories to be told. how will you do it within these structures? And you see some of the buildings we're doing overbuilds and things like that. So it's complex, it's challenging, and Paul and Pagewood have been really up for the challenge. It does cost a little bit more to retain all that character and all that heritage, but we're going to do it in such a way that it's super respectful for the buildings that are there and the legacies that were here. So.
I think that's so important because I think post-COVID, I know we're out of it, but all the real estate had to like up its game if you want to be relevant. You want to get me out of the house? Why am I going to get out of the house? I can order everything online. So it's all got to be an experience. It's got to be interesting. And like you were saying earlier, it's a challenge of these older buildings, and you run into some things you don't see, and you got to figure out how to stay within code or whatever you need to do. But those present opportunities for people to come out and experience the district, you know? So, and also looking at the beautiful renderings, there's a lot of overhangs and all that can create some shade along with the landscape architecture. So I'm really excited about what you guys are going to do here. It's going to be beautiful. All right. So with that, I guess we're all kind of interested. I know it's a massive project. So we're kind of interested in when, what might be the first thing we will see as this thing continues to evolve?
Yes, absolutely. So the big date for us that we're really solving back towards is World Cup. So summer 26. So with the Dynamo Stadium here, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of things that are going to be happening and announced over the next, say, 9 months. Right in the middle of it. So for us, our goal is to have most of these projects either pretty darn close to being complete by the end of next year or complete by the end of next year. So then tenants would have roughly 6-ish months or so to move in and to be operational and occupy ready by the World Cup, so summer 26. It's really not in the sense of how we're set up, where we'll have permits for all 10 buildings by the end of this month. So we bought these properties 2.5 years ago, and so we assembled a team. We have a general contractor in addition to the Gensler team and everybody else that you would need from an engineering and lobbyist standpoint. It's a really massive team of about 30 folks that we've assembled. We've been meeting here every Tuesday for the last almost 2 years. Yeah. So it's a lot of hard work that now we've got to the point that we actually have a permit in hand and essentially plans ready that are ready to move forward on. And so now for us, it's really a function of us advancing and getting a handful of these tenants that we're talking to sign these leases that we would need in order to capitalize the projects. And so I think you'll start to see some dirt being moved around and things happening here first quarter next year.
I'm super excited to hear that. So, well, thank you all very much. Let's give Paul and Jerry a round of applause.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.